Everyone. I am here with a very special guest today, somebody who actually I've just had the pleasure of meeting not long ago, but I was super impressed by, just his story and kind of what you've done in the business, Brian. And, when I heard, you're doing this numbers, but then also just, kind of your personality type. And like, I feel like you're super humble, and, you're not like this, oh my gosh, flashy, like it's all about it, like you literally are doing this the right way. It's just kind of what my takeaway was, when I got to speak to you. And so I was like, man, I've got to get you on the show. I got to get you, get your story out there. And I think there's a lot of value that you can add for the people who are watching, with regards to like just some of the ways that you've built your business to the numbers that it's at today, and maybe some of the systems that you've built, and even just your mindset and your philosophy of like why you're doing it, how you've done this, and all of that good stuff. So I want to welcome you to the show, Brian. And real quick, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just sharing with those who may not know who you are yet, a little bit about just your background, where you're from, and kind of catch us up to where you are at today.
Absolutely. So thank you, and Kyle. It is truly humble implementation because I rip off like 90% of the content that you put out there. So it was a pleasure more to meet you than I think even in that case of meeting me. So yeah, my story's pretty standard to a lot of people in the way they get into real estate by mistake. My intention was I graduated college. I intended on getting into a lobbying career. That was what I have a degree in finance, but I could not sit in front of an Excel sheet all day. It just would drive me absolutely insane. So I always kind of had a passion for politics, went down, worked in the Texas legislature for a while, got into a lobbying firm, and just found a morality smack in the face. Just didn't fit me, didn't fit my personality, didn't fit what I was trying to achieve. The money was great, but just the reality was not there. So came back to El Paso. My wife was still, or my fiance at the time was still finishing up her degree. Went through the process of saying, hey, listen, I got no job. I got nothing to do, and real estate was an easy path. So my family had been in real estate. I had always kind of heard a bit about it in the background. So I was like, hey, this is something I can knock out pretty quick, and I can have a career that will get me to my next stage of when my fiance at the time graduates and we can move away from this area. I grew up in northern New Mexico. New Mexico State, which was where I went to school, was the last resort because I blew out my knee and I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, had the acceptance letter, and just over time it didn't work. So I was kind of left with, I found that fate kind of always follows me and puts me where I need to be. And that's kind of where it happened in real estate. Got into real estate, started, worked my butt off, put 14 hours a day in. For my first couple years, I'm blessed with the fact that my wife and I are both workaholics. So we'd get home and we'd knock out work. Um, as we transitioned though, and we started to get a family, I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be showing houses at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. I can't be running from one side of town to the other. And I can't eat up every one of my weekends with open houses. It just wasn't realistic anymore. So I adapted myself into a team, brought on my first person at about, my daughter turns 11 next week. So right at about 12 years ago,
Wow.
brought on my first team member. And that slowly went through a lot of transitions. I messed up a lot. Then Zillow kind of popped into the market. I got heavy into Zillow. I started spending all this cash. I'd been always a referral business up to that stage. And then I started to transition into a lead purchasing situation. It was not healthy. It was not successful. Or let me rephrase that. It was super successful at the beginning.
Mhm.
But then my team started to cherry pick and it became, as the market shifted, it became less and less profitable.
Yep.
Got away from that, started to shift back, told Zillow, good luck, Godspeed, not playing. Um, Came back and went completely referral, kind of started over fresh. Same agents, but we changed mindsets.
Mhm.
Went back into a referral based business. I was blessed by a few meetings over time, meeting the right people at the right space. Was able to create a real heavy market presence through radio and television. With our partnership that Jay Kender kind of helped kindle way back when, 10 years
Yeah.
ago. And then that turned into where we're at today, 12 agents, 13 admin, aiming for 650 transactions this year. and just a nice general concept of successful business moving forward. So that's where we're at today. And I hope I kind of, that was a flash forward through 17 years of my life, but hopefully that kind of give you a general idea.
No, that's perfect. That was great. So yeah, so now tell me, because I mean, obviously being in El Paso, like, I'm sure maybe your average price and stuff is similar to mine in San Antonio. So 650, what would be like the volume on that roughly? Like, is that what kind of
So
millions of? Yeah.
the aim on that is going to sit at about 140 to 145 million in
Wow.
volume.
Wow. Very nice.
Our average sales price sits at about 100 and so the market average is about 192. Ours sits closer to about 207 to 208.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And you said, and that's with 12 agents, right? So like, my gosh, those agents are pretty productive. I'm sure they're happy to be on the team. And like, it's not like you're just bringing on agents just to, have a body count, and have a bunch of
Yeah.
people. Like these agents that are on this team of yours, I mean, they're all, doing a lot of transactions.
Yeah, so through all the years, I've noticed that there's two ways of approach. There's the way of just adding members onto the team to try and account for numbers, but then there's the approach of creating a high caliber of an agent through training, through techniques, through opportunity. And I've always liked the other version. I'm a true believer that there's something to be said for if I can maintain that relationship with people and keep that dynamic of growth, then it's going to help out. Even to the point that now we've stripped the opportunity to join our team as a full agent. They have to come in as a showing partner first. Do their residency before they even have that opportunity to scale into an agent status. So yeah, we've truly tried to focus on growth within rather than just add numbers, because I see a lot of people add numbers. I had that Zillow conversation. Flash forward to about a month ago, we got onboarded as a Zillow Flex partner, which I've heard is unheard of in the respect that um, nobody leaves Zillow and then they ask Zillow to come back. So we were one of those blessed people, but it is an abundance. We are now dealing with one thing that I've never dealt with before. I guess I've dealt with it in the past, but not to the extent. And that's destructive abundance. My team is actually saying, I'm freaking out. I got too much on my plate. So I get it's a blessing and also a frustration in that same token.
For sure. Well, I definitely want to jump back into the Zillow Flex conversation, because I did actually make a video on that just here recently, and I'd be real curious to get your take on some of the things there, because I know it's a little bit of a newer platform. But real quick, going back, let's I want to kind of transition back to where you were working 14 hours a day, and you kind of had that thought of like, hey, I'm ready to maybe jump into this team deal, start learning this, try and scale and leverage my business. Take me through those like early days of like starting the team, because I know you'd said like I made a lot of mistakes, like a lot of team leaders, I've made a ton of mistakes, and like a lot of what I teach today is based on those mistakes that I made. And so like, what were some of like either mistakes or like lessons that you learned early on? So for somebody that's just getting started with a team, that like if you were going to do it today, like how would you go about those earlier stages?
Yeah, so I'm a believer in tuition payments. So don't ever worry that mistakes are going to happen. People that you bring on are going to make mistakes. But if you're not willing to make that tuition payment to learn from those mistakes, or if you are a micromanager, you're going to lose. And you're going to push people away really quick, because people don't want to be micromanaged. They want to be in a place and an environment that is conducive for growth. So you have to figure that out quick. I have come to the belief that an assistant should be a hire that you make in your first 30 days in real estate. And I know people are going to freak out at that, but your time value of money is more productive if you're doing the tasks and the energy is inputted in the right places. Doing paperwork is not the best use of a real estate agent's time. Now, you should know how to do that paperwork, but it should not be the things you're doing. So that was the biggest aha moment, is realizing that I could level up and scale up. I'm a big disc personality person, and I truly believe that there are people that are designated that like to do paperwork. I know that's crazy for my mindset, but there are, let's use you as an example. You like to write blog posts. If you tell me to write a blog post, I'm literally going to lose my cool. That just is not my brain. It just doesn't function that way. Whereas for you, I'm sure it flows real easy, or at least it seems as it does. So that's just two different mindsets. So you are great for one resource, whereas I might have a benefit in another. So finding those things and leveraging on those, and realizing that people change too. the person that we are when we start and the person that we are today. I used to be a lot heavier D in the DIS personality, whereas now I've fallen into a DS,
Yeah.
which I would have never expected.
Yep.
So that's kind of crazy in that grand scheme, but that's the one key. Find out that people are really great at what they are really great at.
Mhm.
And if they love what they do, they're going to do it amazingly.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. And so now let's also talk a little bit about this transition from like, going from like being super heavy on Zillow, because I've got a lot of agents that are in my group that that's kind of where they're at. They've been heavy on Zillow for the last few years. They're not quite like, maybe the flex isn't offered in their area yet, or like, they're not even thinking about that, but like they've felt like the squeeze of like the increasing lead costs and like just being susceptible to like whatever might change. So like if somebody is in that position, what would some tips be? Because you obviously, like, I don't know if you did it like cold turkey and like all at
Oh
once, or
yeah.
like, and then you transition to like the referral side. Like, what were some things that you experienced then, transitioning out of one lead source that had really provided so much for your business into like, not something new. I'm sure you'd gotten referrals and stuff, but like something that like, hey, I'm gonna believe that this is actually going to keep carrying us through.
Yeah, so the old adage of ripping the Band-Aid, I didn't rip the Band-Aid. I literally took off the tourniquet that was holding all my blood in. And what this comes down to is a conversation that I was in that same process. I was being leveraged. I was the highest spender in Zillow at the moment. I was being leveraged against a brokerage, treating themselves as an individual agent. They were presenting themselves as an individual agent, and they were leveraging me. And every week I'd get a phone call. Hey, this person just added this. Do you want to add that? And I just got to the point where I was done. I was not playing the game anymore. And I actually said, good luck, cut my entire spend. And they're like, well, you still have a month on. I was like, I don't care. Charge me. We'll see what happens. Um, Flash forward a couple years, they come back to me and they say, hey, listen, we'd like to, work with you. And I know I'm probably going to get fired from Zillow for saying this, but we'd like to work with you. We'll waive your entire balance, because I stuck them with like I don't know, an $8,000 or $10,000 balance at that point, because I was just so frustrated with what
Yeah.
they were doing. And they waived my entire balance, and they said, hey, listen, we just want you to be a premier agent again. You're successful in the market. I still reported my sales. I did all the game stuff that I needed to do to play the game, but I wasn't giving him any dollar. So I gave him, I think we ended up being at the minimum for a premier agent, which is somewhere about $500-$600.
Yeah.
That was about 2.5 years ago. And then flash forward to now, they came back to us because I think we played their game. They realized that even though I wasn't buying leads, and I don't encourage buying leads at an abundance. I encourage having it as maybe an ancillary or a secondary source to kind of fulfill everything else that's going on. But listen, Zillow is a true respect to the fact that the market's good, Zillow leads are cheap. The
Mhm.
market's bad, Zillow leads are more expensive, and you convert less.
Mhm.
In your video the other day, I was watching, you had the conversation about 5%.
Mhm.
If I was converting at 5%, I would dump it today, because that is not my conversion rate. Like
Yeah.
5% would literally leave me awake at night.
Yeah.
I need to convert at a higher pace.
Yeah.
So if you get one thing I heard from an agent one time, and this just drove me insane, she's like, I'm getting too many leads from Zillow. I was like, then scale down or figure out a way to scale up.
Mhm.
But don't ever not call those leads. I've heard this statistic over and over again, is that most online leads don't even get one contact,
Oh yeah.
right? The
Yep.
average connection is 0.5. That means that half those leads aren't even getting touched, let alone twice or three
Yeah.
times after that. So that just shocks me. But Zillow is a great add-on. It's not necessarily a great primary source of business. And when we did that, it kicked me in the gut, because I went from all these leads down to nothing. Now, what I found though is that agents were more productive with less. I know that's crazy to say, but
Yep.
when they were hungry for the leads
Yep.
that they did have, they were going to work them harder, they would work them
Yep.
stronger. Um, and and that's a scary thought, because how do we grow while having less? I think the answer is we grow strategically through time.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, and great insight. I mean, I want to actually dive a little bit deeper too, even on just like that idea of like whether it's Zillow leads or just online leads in general, like, because I do believe strongly that like a Google pay-per-click lead it could be similar to a Zillow lead. I mean, they're essentially doing a lot of the same thing. You're just paying to be the number one spot above Zillow. So like if somebody's searching homes for sale in 7-8 whatever zip code, they might come across your thing, go across your IDX site, sign up for, whatever, and then your lead. Whereas maybe if you didn't do that, Zillow would be capturing that lead and then sending it to you. And so, but what I'm really curious of is kind of that follow-up process, because I know the one thing with Zillow is they do have like a little bit more of like a, hey, concierge service, like we're going to kind of warm these leads up for you a little bit, whereas if you're on your own doing Google pay-per-click, I mean, it's entirely up to you. But like, what was your experience, on the follow-up process? And then also speak to maybe like the fact that because you had a team, how much did you leave in the hands of your team, like the team agents, versus like how much did you also maybe have like assistants, like maybe not actual agents that were also responsible for that follow-up? Like what was just kind of your process there?
Yeah. So time value of money, right? Once again, is that conversation. So obviously my biggest benefit is that prospecting out, but the follow through and the follow up comes down to I need to make sure that I can tangibly get to it every day. As we've scaled, the initial stage was I connected with every lead. I'd have a time that I would connect with every lead that I had in my database. And it was time consuming. It would take a day, a week to go through everything that I was doing. Mix that into the prospecting techniques and so on and so forth. But this is also why I was working 14 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wrap that into when a team member came on. Now I had somebody that I could leverage in that resource to start to do some of those extra details, right? They could take off that paperwork off my plate. They could take off that stuff. So I gave more time to follow through and follow up. In the Zillow technique, even in that place, we still had to connect. So what we did is we started drilling down, hey, this is going to be a prospecting time that we're going to go back out and reach out to leads again. So we would designate an hour or two aside per day, 3 days a week, that we would do that. And then it turned into a transition that then we scaled into the ISA model. Once again, finding the wheelhouse of the right person.
Yep.
I'm not a believer that an ISA turns into an agent. I'm a believer that an ISA has a very distinct personality. Yep. And if they are great, they can make just as much, if not more, than some very productive agents.
Yep.
And that's the key here, is that if we found that value, if we created that value in the right avenues, now the ISAs are what touch all my leads before the agents even get access to them, because that is the key. They're good at what they're good at. They like short-term conversations. Yep. They like that fast and furious. And they don't have a problem with people yelling and cussing at them as they're calling them cold on the phone, right? And that's the key, is finding the right wheelhouse. So at one point it was my wheelhouse. Then it moved into my team's buyer's agent's wheelhouse, as I was still the only one taking listings. And now it's moved into an ISA wheelhouse where they're more productive.
Yep.
Now we have obviously a structured timeline. I'm not allowed to call it 10 days of pain anymore, but we still follow a 10 days of success is what my team has changed it to.
Nice.
But 10 days of success that we follow through and try and make sure that we're making those connections. But we still make calls. You're wearing a Red X shirt. I have 2 Vortex accounts that are doing circle prospecting and doing expireds and free bows and FISBOs every single day. That's our process, because the ISAs are great at it. And why would I not leverage on what they're great at?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. So when you cringed on the 5% conversion, what's a respectable conversion percentage, would you say?
So in my grand scheme of things, 13% is my sweet spot.
Nice.
13% of anything that comes through our pipeline, whether that's Zillow, whether that's a warm transfer lead, whatever it is, 13% is where we need to be at. So that is where we want to live in and where we want to live at. And that 13% should increase over the course of the year, because we should have the ones that we dealt with last year coming back to fruition this year. So that increase, my love, would be at 20%. Now, that sounds like some people look at me like I'm crazy, but listen, I don't think anybody ever logs on to Zillow and says, yeah, I don't want a house.
Yeah.
They want a house.
Right.
It's just a question of when they want that house.
Yep.
And the truth and reality is that when you call back, so realtor.com did a study a long time ago that said that 89% of anybody that fills on a online lead source is going to commit to something in real estate in the next year, whether that be a rental, whether that be a sale, whether that be a purchase, whatever it might be. They're going to do something. The question is if they're going to do it with me or if they're going to do it with somebody else.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep, that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
so man, yeah, that I might have to update my numbers. Then at least I've got my headline for this video here. You know how this agent closes 13% of all of his leads. That's, I mean, I'll tell you. I mean, that's super awesome. I've heard numbers like that. I'm always hesitant to say because I mean, I just feel like not enough people are doing that there. But
Yeah.
you know, so when you have your 10 days of success, like what does that entail? Like take me through that process.
Yeah. So be careful with automation, right? Because automation doesn't make sense. A Zillow lead comes in and they put their email as their first name, right? So my email as the first name comes into my database. And now if I have a drip campaign that says, hey, XYZ213 at,
Right.
it doesn't make sense. So be careful about automation. I love automation and I put a lot of automation in play, but there has to be some human element in it,
Yep.
right? And that human element needs to be interactive and proactive. Also, you have to have something that offsets the off times, right? We have an AI that jumps in and books appointments at 4 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's powerful because then I'm getting the stuff that I would have been losing because they're not going to answer the phone because they're sleeping,
Yep.
whatever the reason might be. So that's the key, is finding what fits the best in that particular. I truly believe that every lead in our database has the ability to convert.
Yep.
It's just a question of what I'm going to do to get them to convert. And as realtors, we tend to get in this mindset that says, oh, we know best. And when a lead doesn't respond to us or doesn't show up to the appointment, that means they didn't want to work with us. That's not what it means. It means that their kid threw up in the car as they were driving to the appointment. They had to pull over and clean it out, right?
Yep.
Or they forgot. Guys, I forgot. My wife made a joke this morning about the fact that, I continuously missed my dentist appointment. I have to reschedule almost every time. It's like an automatic. In fact, me and the secretary have such a relationship that she doesn't even charge me for not showing up. She just automatically expects that I'm going to miss it the first time and come the second time, right? That's just me because that's not my top of mind.
Yep.
A house is only top of mind when it's absolutely needed.
Yep.
And when is it needed? When you're, I made a joke the other day that we oftentimes get calls when a person gets pregnant, and then we don't sell the house until 3 months after they've had the baby, right?
Yep.
And that's just because the need changes
Yep.
through time.
Absolutely. No, that's good. Good insight. So, really cool. Yeah, I love that. Well, now I want to shift gears real quick and talk about, so when you made that transition back into kind of the referral side of it, right? What were some things that you did differently with your team, but also just like the general direction that you started doing? Was there more like events, like or like what were you kind of
Yeah.
doing when you said, hey, we're stopping this, we're taking the tourniquet off, and like I'm going after this? Like what was the changes that you made? Some of the biggest changes?
Yeah, so the biggest changes are we needed to get back engaged. We need to apologize to the leads that we weren't taking care of in the past. And we needed to realize that we had to stay engaged and in touch with these people. I stole Jay Kinder's entire raving fan club. We installed that automatically, and we put in actionable items. We bought a moving truck. We did those things that we wanted people to interact with us. Today, we even have a person that's on our team that's a client concierge. Her entire job is wrapped around holding and hugging those customers.
That's cool.
Client events are huge. Adopting neighborhoods is huge. This stems back all the way back to when I met Jay, 12, 13 years ago, that he wanted a 40% market share of a particular neighborhood. How do you approach that? How do you do that? You adopt everything. You adopt the buyers that come to the neighborhood. You do all that stuff. And we've now incorporated, and I don't do it at the pace that I would want. I still have lots of growth to happen, but we are just trying to stay in touch with people more often. We do this obviously with the standard stuff, right? We use viral marketing to pump out a couple videos to our clients every month. We make sure that they get valuations when tax time comes up. Texas is a huge property tax state. Everybody just got their central appraisal district in Texas. we need to connect with them and have that conversation. We try to lead with value. We don't try to lead with marketing, right? So we offer things of value. We offer, solutions rather than just, hey, list with me, because list with me doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
Hey, here's our value.
Yep.
When you're ready, then list with me. That's the scenario.
I love that. Lead with value, don't lead with marketing. That's good. That's solid advice. So cool. Well, let's talk about, obviously, we met at an EXP event here recently for called the Sprint, where, it was pretty exclusive. Only 100 agents in each region, and each of 3 regions got invited to this event. So obviously you're doing things well on the EXP side of things too, as far as growing out your revenue share and all this. But take me back to even just before this, and we'll get into kind of that side of it. But like, when you decided to make this move to EXP and go this direction, what was going on in your mind? What was going on in your business? Like, why did you decide that it was right for you?
It's kind of a loaded question. So my EXP story starts almost 4 years ago. Jay Kinder had just made the move. And Jay and I had been, I was with Jay Brum when it was Kinder Reese coaching way back when. And as I mentioned, Jay had connected me with the radio and television experts that I'm now part of and been part of for 10 years. So we had a connection, and he reached out and said, hey, I'm making this move. And I said, good luck, Godspeed, gonna crash and burn, I'll see you in a month. Flash forward 3 years later, I owned a Century 21 franchise. I looked at my CPA, and he told me how much I had paid into Reology, not even Century 21, to Reology. And for that, they were going to give me a plaque. That number was excess of $190,000 just out of my pocket, not out of any of the agents in my brokerage. That was just out of my pocket. That day, I had a serious conversation. That was around January 30th. I had a serious conversation with my business partners at the time. And I said, listen, this is not something that's healthy for me. It's not something healthy that I can continue. And I need to make a transition. And they freaked out. You own the business. I was like, well, I don't need to own the business anymore. I do not feel that this is enough value for what I'm getting out of it. And I'm sorry, it's not. And they're family, by the way, these partners. So it was a tough conversation. But Century 21 locked you into a franchise agreement for 10 years. We still had 1.5 years on that franchise agreement. I said, I can't do it. So I said, hasta luego. That is about February 15th. In that January to February, I'd had 2 conversations with Jay, and I said, man, I'm thinking, tell me if this is the right way, or do I go independent? I made the transition. So it took me about 2 weeks from the 15th. And I was onboarded by, I think, February 22nd. So I went from no way to onboard in less than 1.5 months because I saw finally what was there. And over that transition, I've now found that all the things, the grass is technically greener on the other side, and it's not being fertilized, right? It's real. And the camaraderie, the just the collaborative method is huge. Gogo said something that Sprint event that really stood out, and she said, listen, I was hearing things that were being talked about on stage about creating a spreadsheet, and I was calling my team to create a spreadsheet, and then I realized that somebody walked up to me and said, you don't need to create it, I have it, here you go. Like, that's the concept. We're all in it together. Why would we? Because I've always done that. I've always operated that. If somebody asks me a question, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them all my secrets, because guess what? They're not secrets. Greg Harrelson, one of the gurus that I think is just amazing. He has a Level Up podcast that he puts out, and it's just phenomenal. But Greg said it the best. He said the only difference between today and 30 years ago is that 30 years ago I had to hire 4 people to dial phones. Today I get to use a dialer like a Red-X or a Vortex, right? That's it. That's the only thing that changed. We still have to call people. We still have to talk to people. So I think I answered that question, but the reality is that how have I been able to promote that conversation of why EXP is so amazing? Because it's been pretty amazing for me. One, I kept my $200,000 in my pocket, or even better, I was able to take that $200,000 and invest it in equity share. And then on that same token, I've also had the ability to scale an extra retirement. So I own a large property management company. I own a lot of rentals because that's how we were taught as realtors to create a retirement. But now I have a new vehicle. Technically, I have a couple new vehicles that I can now jump on and have multiple revenue streams coming in my retirement. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Now,
long-winded, but I think I get it.
no, that was perfect. And I want to ask, because I was actually just on a call with another group they're looking to come on over in the Charleston, South Carolina market, and they've heard that you cannot have property management, like they've got a big property management business, and still be at EXP. But I actually kind of was like, no, actually that's not true. You mean you can't do property management within EXP, but you still can have a separate business, separate LLC that does property management, and you be doing your real estate sales through EXP. So real quick, since you're doing, or you've done that, what's your experience there? Like, are there any like little intricacies that people might need to know in that spot?
They just don't want the cross membered. They don't want EXP doesn't want to deal with the rentals, and EXP doesn't want your sales going through the rental side of the equation. As long as those two things are maintained, and as long as you have, now granted, some states are not as conducive to this. Texas allows you to have multiple licenses to accommodate through corporate license, but so that is one of the things that you have to make sure that is relevant. But the answer to that is they just don't want to be a piece of it, which kind of shows you that they understand that they don't want to get in a wheelhouse that they don't understand. They got into commercial late in the game, but now they've had an explosive growth in commercial because they got in it the right way.
Right.
And compared to my previous company, that's a breath of fresh air. Don't jump off the cliff before you figure out, hey, how deep is the water, right? Because that's the problem, is that and I hate to bash Century 21 because my family has owned it for 40 plus years. That's not the reality. The reality is that Realogy and a growth corporate brand is trying to chase things. They're chasing things constantly because they're afraid that they're not providing their value when things like EXP and Real and these new avenues of real estate are coming in. They're terrified. Remax suing EXP. Really? Do you know how many calls I've gotten from Remax in the last year? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous.
I know.
But they're afraid, and that shows you that, hey, something's changing. When people are afraid, when you have Gary Keller talking about EXP almost exclusively at their event, come on, that tells you that people are afraid. Realogy is afraid. KW is afraid. Remax is terrified. It'll be interesting.
Yep. Well, let's real quick, because I want to take 5 more minutes of your time because you got so much good stuff. So I want to extend this out a little bit longer because I want to just know also, looking into the future, like I know you're looking to do, your goal this year is 650 homes, but like let's talk about like kind of the market and where you see it going maybe in the next couple of years. Not necessarily like trying to predict if it's going to increase or decrease, but like what are just trends that you think agents need to be aware of that can help them stay not just relevant, but maybe either thrive or to do better than what they're doing? Like, what do agents need to know now that is a little bit different than what it may be in the last, few years?
Yeah, so the ability to pivot, right? For those of the Friends fans out there, we have to learn to pivot throughout everything, right? Because if we don't know how to pivot, the downside is we're going to get stuck in a hallway with a big ass couch, right? And that's the reality. Listen, you have to realize that Zoom wasn't even a thing 3 years ago, and now it is absolutely a thing. And if we don't transition through that, I'm an avid user of Sisu, and I feel that it has scaled my game so much, right? But I have a lot of people that still love CPE, and I love CPE while it was something of value. But then I had to realize that the value needs to change and it needs to adjust. And if those companies are not willing to do that, I've gone through Commissions Inc. I've gone through Boomtown. I was even at Tiger Leads way back in the day. But those products were great when they were great products. And then they slowly transitioned that they didn't scale and change with the market. And we need to be conscious of that. If we're that stagnant, I see every day agents that have been in this business, right? If I get realtor emeritus, that's a problem. if I'm still having to sell homes. Now, if I want to sell homes, that's a different story. But for those of you that don't know, Realtor Emeritus is 40 years as a realtor, right? If I'm 40 years as a realtor and I'm still having to go out and show homes every day because I have to and not because I want to, that's a problem. And that's the biggest issue here, is that people are not paying attention to the fact that it has to change. We have to scale. We have to figure out how to do stuff. Zillow Flex, terrifying. But I had to realize that that's a value add right now. The realtor, or not the realtor, the referral lead, right? They're grabbing our leads before we're getting them, and now they're selling them back to us at a higher rate, even though it sounds like we're not having to pay till closing.
Right.
That's the reality of today. Opcity, Flex, Home Story, Home Light, you name it. That's the story right now. So let's deal with it as it is. And as it transitions, let's transition with it. I've had some of my best years in what everybody else was having their worst year, because I was able to look at it different. Listen, I don't want to sell foreclosure homes again, but I did, because that was what was there at the moment. As we come through this new transition, my crystal ball says very simply, our inventory is still going to be light because people need to sell in order for inventory to release. Interest rates are going to change. You know, I heard a person that's in San Diego, which is kind of like the kindling in the fire of real estate, and they said that mortgage starts were down 80%. That tells me that I need to be more engaged with my people that are qualified today to get me through the remainder of the year.
Yep.
That's the pivot, right?
Yep.
I can't expect that I'll just have extra buyers to come into the equation. I got to know that I have to get back into the engagement of relationship, right?
Yep.
If I have good relationships with agents, they'll still accept offers, and people still need houses no matter what.
Right.
I've been in it 17 years, and in that 17 years, I've never found that people don't want to buy houses. It's just what kind of houses they want to buy, when they want to buy, and how they want to buy.
Yep.
That's it.
Love it. Well, so now what's your big goal? Like, what's your big vision? Like, 3, 5, maybe 10 years down the road, like, what are you hoping to build? Like, what would be like the end, not end result, because it's kind of hard, but like what are some big goals, big visions of yours here in the next, foreseeable future?
Yeah, so my passion operates in helping people. So I love helping people. I think that's why our conversation really kind of resonated in the fact, listen, I can now share some of my benefits and some of my mistakes so other people don't have to make those mistakes.
Yep.
You go back, wisdom. I always thought, as a kid, I would tell my parents, I know better. Well, the answer was I didn't know better, but it took me to getting older and having kids to realize that I didn't know better.
Yeah.
Wisdom is gained. So if I can share some of that wisdom and not let people have to make the mistakes that I did, that's going to be huge. So, whether that be through coaching, whether that be through partnership, whatever that might be, I would love to offer that solution. As far as the business side of the equation, my intent is to, I'd love to have all my properties paid off. That's my initial goal. I see Jay hanging out on a Puerto Rican beach, paying 4% tax. That doesn't look too horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to live in Puerto Rico, but at the end of the day, that's a tangible looking at.
Yep.
Maybe that happens in the future or some variant of that.
Yep.
But I love to see people scale. I love to see other people grow.
Yep.
And I know that sounds kind of kumbaya, but if I can help them grow, I think now I found a vehicle. Whereas with the brokerage, I wanted to grow to a certain stage. I wanted to get to that 20 to 30 transactions. After that, they start asking more for commission, and I don't want to play that game, right? But now I can help people scale unlimited. And now that grows me too. That's the value that EXP, that people think, oh, it's a pyramid. Listen, it's no more pyramid than any other thing out there. It's just, instead of giving it to the guys with the deep pockets, we're now sharing it with everybody. And that's the value. I can help these people grow, and they're growing me at the same time. So that's huge.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great deal. So that's a perfect way to wrap up, because I want to ask, for those that have watched this interview, you've dropped some great, nuggets, some great knowledge bombs on people. And like, I'm sure a lot of people, want to know where they can follow you, or where they can maybe hear more about you, or even maybe partner with you or connect with you. What would you say is like the best way for somebody to connect with you today?
Super easy. You can find me anywhere on the social web at Brian Burds. So just type in Brian Burds. So the Irish don't know how to spell, so we spell it with a U instead of an I. So you can find us there. You can find us on our website for partnership at brianburds.work. Or you can just give me a DM on Facebook, any of those details. The answer is now, if you can't find me on the internet, I failed anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So.
I love it. I love it. Well, Brian, I've enjoyed our time here. And actually, it's funny. I was talking to a Jaime earlier today. We do a call every Wednesday. And we talked about, we were like, we need to get Brian on this call in the morning and, just kind of like mastermind and do some stuff. And that's truly the power of EXP. I mean, all three of us were in like different groups, but it don't matter. Like we're all over here, trying to help one another out, grow this company, grow our personal businesses, and it all works to all of our benefits. And so that's the cool thing. So we definitely got to talk a little bit more about getting you on that call and doing a little bit more masterminding, because dude, you got so much knowledge. I loved just, hearing the way that you think about things. So thank you so much again for being on this call. And I look forward to staying in touch and seeing all of your success.
I appreciate it in every way that you can possibly believe. And like I said, Kyle, you are amazing. Your content generation is just, it floors me. Last night, I was sitting there getting prepared to kind of jump on this call this morning. Now I'm reading through your stuff and I'm like, man, he just has a way with words that I wish I had. So when you're ready to write my blog post, I'm all for it.
Yes, I'll let you know when that comes. Talk to you later, Brian. Have a good one.
Thanks, man.